Hey, what's going on, everybody? I appreciate those who showed up from my gaming channel and for all the newcomers as well. I'm currently a solo game developer in the process of creating my passion project. It's called iDentityRebels, an online open world RPG, which is an amalgamation of many ideas and experiences from playing video games throughout my years. One of the reasons I started this game dev YouTube channel is to share with you my experiences as I embark on this long journey. And hopefully, once you begin to understand what this project is all about, together, you and I can share some great ideas along the way. Welcome to my very first devlog. Man, I've been sitting on this for so long. So let me formally introduce myself. My name is Bilal, and I go by Be Righteous on my other channel. I'm a father of 3, and I have a beautiful wife as well. They've supported me 100% every step of the way, and I appreciate that so much because for those who don't know, game dev is not easy. Not to mention me working a full-time job with maintaining a separate gaming YouTube channel. And ever since I started making content, it immediately captivated me and quickly became a passion of mine, no question. And let me just say that before starting game dev, I had zero experience in regards to programming, animation, or 3D modeling. I didn't even know how one could get started in this whole game development industry. Thought it was something totally out of my league, But all my life, I have been an artist. So I started there, something familiar. And as I progressed through development, I gradually learned more skills along the way, and I'm still learning. But when I was younger, I used to draw comic books, creating my own characters, each having their own lore with mini stories and episodes. So making art for my game was very exciting to me. It was something I was familiar with. Plus, I had already conceptualized most of the ability system and how it worked. So I had an overall mental picture of how I wanted it to look. Also knew I wanted it to be a third-person shooter. I just think it's really cool to be able to see yourself when in combat while playing the game. So when drawing this character, I wanted to make sure it had a bit more than average detail. In iDentityRebels, you do have a choice to create your own character though, but this character is one that has a place in the story, one of many. Oh, and it took a while for me to get used to drawing again, but when I finally got that itch back, it just began to flow. As a matter of fact, this character I wanted to model after myself. And I know y'all feel me on this one. I've always wanted to be in the game that I'm playing. That's why I'd spend hours upon hours on a character creation screen before starting a game like Skyrim. Because character creation is a representation of you. What better way to fully experience that? And it's especially important if that game you're playing is one you really love and been waiting for years to release. So putting myself in the game felt really awesome. And here's an issue that comes up a lot when starting game dev conversations regarding new developers. Start small. It makes sense, especially for people who are new to this. I understand it, but those 2 words never resonated with me. And I do consider myself a fairly new game developer, but never felt like I wanted to start small. Because when first conceptualizing my game idea, nothing small came into my thought process. And I know 99% of game developers think that way when starting out, not even knowing the many layers and different skill level requirements that game dev has. But I consider myself a quick learner and I love taking on challenges. So my game has very much detail, a story, lore, an ability system. It has all of what you would think an online RPG shooter should have. And this devlog is to give you an introduction to that. Also, an idea of how I wanted to go with the gear system. The idea is that there are 4 separate chest armor class defaults, each with an ultimate ability and something that could identify them aesthetically. Located in the middle of the chest armor, red for DPS, yellow for tank, green for healer, and blue for tech. Now, along with the chest armor, I wanted other gear to complement it. So for each class, there are gloves, shoes, and helmets. And I'd like to say something in regards to talents and abilities when it comes to gameplay. Games in general. Almost every single game out there has an ability system, right? But they rarely make sense when it comes to how much that ability actually relates to the piece of gear it's allocated to. Here's what I mean. If let's say you're playing Outriders, for example, and you got some legendary boots, but the ability on those boots have absolutely no relationship with how boots function in general. It'll grant something like the ability to increase your fire damage or something else random. And I know that having gear makes sense that way is hard to do, but for iDentityRebels, I wanted to try. I wanted to make the gear that you have be relevant to why you're wearing it. Like gloves and shoes that give you a faster interval speed, which will allow you to perform a melee or dodge roll faster. a tech helmet that when you look through the lenses will illuminate secret pathways, or a tank helmet which can grant up to 40% damage resistance, which makes you actually feel more tanky. The point is, I'm trying to make a system that feels realistic based on the gear that you're wearing. And I think that's important, at least to me. As I said, it's an online open world RPG looter shooter. The story is huge, and I believe that alone requires its very own video. But let me give you an idea. It's set in a semi-futuristic post-apocalyptic environment which is ruled by the regime, an authoritarian government that rules with oppression and violence, fueled by basic human nature's need for power. Now we know that social media on the surface seems like an innocent method for communication and networking, right? Well, for those considered woke, social media is a tool for the powers that be to use in order to secure information gathered from those using social media. Spying, in a nutshell. And in this particular situation, it was used for a very specific purpose. Guillaume Marsh, a mechanical engineer responsible for the manufacture of some of the latest cutting-edge machines and equipment used to catapult modern systems years ahead of its time. Being a victim of his own ambition, his latest work consists of a revolutionary combat system called Ultratech, with a stim pack core, delivering 4 types of stimulants: healing, tech, damage, and protection. Guillaume's main motivation behind this is optimism, thinking that this can be used as a force for good. But the regime had their eye on him for the longest and wanted to take control of this Ultratech once complete. Through social media, they were able to consistently monitor him up until that very moment they decided it was time to abduct and force him to fully develop it for them. Obtaining Ultratech was the only thing that allowed the regime to fully reveal themselves as a totalitarian government, to rule like never before. Land of the free and home of the brave is no longer the motto. Of course, many people would never stand for something like this. So civil unrest would ensue, which led to civil war. People died. Others surrendered to the regime. The individuals who fought and were left over and escaped were known as rebels. They left the city, taking with them what they could of the Ultratech armament. So many families were separated as well during the chaos. As time passed, after this, many events were set in motion, one of which led to a cataclysmic event consequently spawning many different factions, enemy types, and locations to explore. Now this Ultratech is the source of how the gear system works. The variety of chest armor cores, along with perks the associated gear comes with, are what will allow you to create the various builds and playstyles, which we'll get into more in the next episode. For this one, I wanted to give you a brief understanding of me and what my project consists of. Also a small introduction of the gear and story. Next episode, I'll go more in depth with the ability system and talk about how I brought it all to life. Thank you so much for listening. You have no idea how much I appreciate you for giving me a chance to share my passion with you. If you'd like to continue this conversation with me or anyone else, check the description for the links to iDentityRebels Discord, Twitter, and others. Let's make this a movement. Subscribe to my channel to stay up to date with everything, and drop a like if you enjoyed or a dislike if you didn't, and tell me why. Until next time, I'll see you on my next devlog. Peace.